Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Glenn.
What's up, Mikey? How you doing, brother?
Doing good. Hey, did you read this week's newsletter? Oh, what? You didn't sign up at Sober.Coffee to be on our mailing list?
I did.
You did?
I did sign up, and
Okay.
I got the first inaugural newsletter, and I thought it was so sexy.
All right.
Informative, sexy. It let us know about writings/blogs, part of our website, Sober.Coffee.
Yeah, and we got some stuff brewing in the background. Look,
a lot going on.
The email list, we're not going to inundate people. Just sign up so that we can plug in. When we got stuff going on, we can let you know. You got ideas, you can let us know. It's just all about working together.
Yeah, and we're out there on social medias. You know, Brian says them at the beginning and end of every show, Sober.Coffee Podcast. You know, I have a Twitter at Stay Sober Today. That's the Twitter all focused on sobriety. I think all told, we got, not that it's about the numbers, but I think we got like 12,000 or some connections or whatever, which we love hearing from.
Right.
You know, if you're out there listening on whatever platform, on Apple, Spotify, Castbox, whatever, just take a second and drop a review on there.
Yeah, that's good point.
We're really trying to get the message out.
And,
right?
and why? Well, you know, what does a review do? Real briefly, a review just simply makes us more searchable because Google can't see what's inside our podcast, but they can. They take into account that if people review us. So we're not looking for accolades. We're not looking for.
Well, Mikey is.
Well, yeah, I am, but Glenn's not. But what we're looking for is the next struggling alcoholic to be able to stumble upon us, and you can help by leaving us a review. Great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
That'd be great. Awesome, man.
So listen.
So what's up? Table for 5? Table for 2?
No,
table
for 2. Just our
just
little
us,
corner
man.
spot. We're
I love it. We kick so much stuff around about sobriety. It's great.
Well, that's what it's about. I
Love
mean,
having coffee.
For me, it's a priority. I mean, look. Here's the honesty. If I don't have sobriety, I have none of the other stuff. I don't have the spiritual connection. I don't have the financial means. I don't have the relationships. You know. Now, mind you, with each one of those things I just mentioned, there's challenges and
responsibilities.
And responsibilities, and I get that. But, man, looking at life sober, you know, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. Looking at life sober is just a much better way to live for me, for this guy. I found it to be quite rewarding.
Sobriety is very rewarding. It took me a long time. You know, I feel like those horses at the racetrack, you know, how they like buck or the bulls, you know, the big bull at the rodeo, you know, all the, you know, shucking and jiving and hitting everything. And, you know, it took me a while to get inside that chute, you know, and really committed and surrendering, you know, to running the sober path. Mm-hmm. But, man, I'm glad I did. And it was worth every bit of the struggles getting in. And, you know, hey, you know what? Sobriety is an easy it's a simple program, not easy. And I think that's the way it's said, right?
Right.
But damn, it's worth it.
So I'm at work today, and I'm sitting at a temporary desk, right? And the temporary desk has this leg that comes out from underneath the table, and I'm in a chair with rollies, and I'm trying to get up to my laptop, and the rollie of the chair keeps hitting the leg of the table, the extended leg of the table, and I can't get close to my laptop, and I'm backing up and banging it, and I'm getting myself all frustrated. Glenn, it's a half-pound laptop. All I had to do was, with my little fingers, pull it and drag it 3 inches.
It's amazing how simple it is, but it's not easy.
I sat there and did the hard thing.
All frustrated.
All frustrated. All I had to do was move the laptop 2 inches closer to me instead of getting 2 inches closer to that. I don't know if
that's a great analogy.
I don't know if that made any sense, but
it's a great snapshot for sobriety.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk about this is our trending series. So
doing hashtag trending.
Yeah, hashtag trending, and this is one of the top searched items in the last month, and hundreds of thousands of people typed in this phrase: "What is dry drunk?" And I scratch my head and I say, first of all,
where do you think they heard that?
Right, where do you think they heard that? And spoiler alert, I did go back and look, and it is in fact an AA term. AA coined the term.
So it's not WebMD.
It's not WebMD.
Okay.
AA coined the term, and but it's, for me, what is dry drunk syndrome? That's what they call it. There's actually a name for it. Now, I did a stutter step there because it's a syndrome.
I was trying to jump in and bail you out, but I wasn't sure.
Well, I was trying to get the word.
Where to grab.
I was trying to get the word. It's a syndrome. I'm like, really? It's a syndrome? That makes it official, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we recently did, and I don't know the date. It doesn't stick out to me or the episode number, but we recently had a guy on by the name of Dr. John. Who really tore this apart, but we're addressing it again because it's part of our hashtag trending, and people out there Googling this stuff by the hundreds of thousands. It's just amazing, right? So a lot of people are asking questions, so it's part of our hashtag trending series. But we really covered it in depth with Dr. John, and there's a couple episodes. There were 3 bonus drops. One is step 1, you're fucked. Step 2 is, or the second episode is, all about the ism, right? It's what's going on inside. It's an ism, not a wasm. And then the third bonus drop was what is sober, right? And in AA, I didn't realize that the term came specifically from AA, but we certainly use it a lot. There's 3 ways to go. And as I say this, I can remember, I can hear Dr. John saying it. I have 3 ways to go. Drunk, dry, and sober. And with a lot of things in AA, we hear it, we say it, but what does it really mean? So I'm looking forward to digging in.
Right. And then other people have added on to that ism and said that you can do drunk by yourself, you can do dry by yourself, but to do sober, it takes a community. It's a we.
So that's the we part of the program.
That's the we part of the program.
I love it.
But it's funny. I have a relative, and they have a friend of theirs that's in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and this person I know doesn't have a drinking problem, but
they have a thinking problem.
They have a thinking problem. No, that you're absolutely right. And they're all grumpy, and so the guy in recovery tells the guy who has no drinking problem at all, you're a dry drunk, and the relative is like, well, I don't even drink, and they're like, yeah, that's the point. You're just dry. You're not. I guess if you're going to talk about dry, you need to talk about sober, but dry drunk is a syndrome, obviously, and it has all kinds of symptoms that go with it, that.
So how do you define, give me one sentence that would define dry drunk from your perspective?
From my perspective, dry drunk is somebody who's not drinking, but they haven't changed their behavior.
Dude, mine is so close to that. Mine is not drinking, same shitty behavior.
Well, you added a
quote unquote.
You added an extra in there.
Yeah, I mean it's hey, you know what? And for me, and your story too, as I know it, just stopping drinking is one thing, right? But then what, right? And for me, I drank primarily to escape who I was, right? I just couldn't take Glenn, right? So if I stop drinking, that Glenn is still there. That same shitty behavior Glenn is still there. And so then it just becomes painful for me to put up with that because I have no tools, I have no booze, I have no escape. right? And all I'm doing is sitting there. It reminds me of that time I sat there for 3 hours in that stupid white plastic chair when I was in rehab, and I was going out of my mind. I hated myself. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to spend time with myself, so that's why I drank to escape. Mm-hmm. So I did have a period of time where I had to put up with myself, and I call that suffer better, until I learned a new way of living, and I learned that through the steps of AA, from working the steps, and from learning from people on the sober path, with me, next to me, in front of me, behind me, to the point where I started living a life that I didn't need to escape from. But that took a period of time. And yeah, there were some times when I was in early sobriety, I didn't have the happy, joy.
Right.
I was a dry drunk.
Right.
And that's painful.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, again, going back to the behavioral change, it made me think about, that's one of the things I look for today is my body doing the same thing it did in the pre-recovery days? Does my thought process move to my body actions? Am I acting and thinking like I used to? And that's a big red flag for me.
Right. So part of that is awareness, right? I mean, you have to be aware. Hey, you have to care, right? You have to care about the product that you're delivering. You got to care about how you're behaving, right? And today I care. You care. For a long period of time, we were our own King Kongs, and I mean, hey, if you didn't like me, tough shit, man. It's just who I am, So I think you have to care, and you got to be aware, and then that's when you start latching in and using some tools.
Right. See, for me, when we looked at the topic of, what is dry drunk, and I thought to myself, that's that grumpy guy who I meet somewhere, either in the rooms, outside the rooms, or whatever, and, I haven't had a drink in 14 years. My wife's a bitch. Church sucks. Just got fired. Hate the people I work with. Hate the politics. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're missing out on life.
Yeah, I have a sponsee, and he's not. I talk to him periodically. He's quote unquote busy, so he doesn't really have time to attend on a regular basis. But he called me up a couple months ago. He says, "Hey, I really need to start going to meetings again. I'm a dry drunk." And I'm like, "Well, what does that mean? What does that look like?" Mm-hmm. He goes, "I'm miserable. I'm miserable the way I look at things, the way I treat people, the way I act. I'm just miserable." Mm-hmm. And I need to, get back, because when I was consciously working the steps of AA and going to meetings and being involved in part of the community, I wasn't miserable.
Mm-hmm. Does a dry drunk need to, I'm asking you the question, I don't have the answer. Does a dry drunk, is part of the definition need to be that they're craving alcohol?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think you're just miserable inside of your head and you can't find relief. Mm-hmm. I think that's a dry drunk. I think it's, and that's where Dr. John jokes. He goes, "Hey, man, sometimes it's better just to go drink."
Right.
And that's not the message that we want to give, but it can be so painful inside the head with the head trash. That it's just, it's, for me, it took a while, Mike. I really had to learn how to suffer better and just know, hey, I'm going to get through this pile of shit. Right. I will get through this pile of shit, but I didn't do it myself. Just like you stay connected to a bunch of people.
Right.
That's the we part of the program, or the community part of the program that you outlined.
Right. What I heard you say there, a couple of things, is, number one, you've gone from pain to peace. And again, I don't want to overstate the word peace, but that's what I heard you say.
Snippets of peace. Snippets
of peace. And that's what you strive for now, that to fill that hole in the soul that Dr. John talks about, and is written in other places. It's, but you've taken and exchanged pain for those snippets. I love how you put that, snippets of peace. The other thing I heard you say is that you've taken your chaos that was centered around you. This is what I hear when you're talking, right? You've taken the chaos that was centered around that when you were centering around yourself, and you've turned it into, and maybe this is just because I know you've turned it into care for other people. That's what I read between your lines, because that's just what jumped out at me. And maybe it was the words you said, or maybe it was because I know what you do off podcast. I know what you do, and you do things to make sure that you aren't a dry drunk. I mean, you do actions that assure that you don't go back down that path, because my definition, again, is going back and doing the same things that I used to do.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I've never heard that. I like it. Chaos into caring. I mean, the way I've shared it is, I've turned my mess into a message. I think that's a popular phrase out there. Certainly not something that I came up with. But I've never heard chaos into caring, and I mean, that's just, that's the dial that I had to go through, from pain and being dry. But when we talk about being a dry drunk, it almost makes me think, when we've talked about stages of relapse, right? And it's all mental, right? It's all emotional. It's all mental. And that first stage of relapse is the emotional, mental, I'm off, right? Something's messed up. I don't like how things are going. I can't find the tools. My sponsor's not picking up the phone. People aren't meeting my expectations. I'm building resentments. I'm using a bunch of stuff from the program, right? But things aren't going right, and yet I'm not using any of the tools, right? I'm just kind of stewing in myself, and that becomes a dry drunk, right? And I get to be miserable. Right. And hey, being miserable can be a character defect. Some people like that.
Yeah, right. No, absolutely. They're drawn
like
to it. They magnate to it.
Yeah.
Let's segue to hope for a second, because I want to do a plug for, a pathway to a better life. And the best one that I've found in my years on Earth, and I've tried them all. I've walked on hot coals with Anthony Robbins, and I've
Did you really? I think I forgot that. I think I forgot that.
Yeah, I really did. It was in Milwaukee in the 80s, and I walked on the hot coals with Anthony Robbins. I mean, it wasn't like one of his sidekicks. It was
Were
when
you
he
drinking?
I'm certain. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I had it to
So
go.
you're a little numb.
Yeah, right.
Those
Yeah, it
feces
didn't
were a little
matter.
numb.
Come on, turn the heat up. But here's the thing. I think that the best program, the best pathway to living I've ever stumbled upon is the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because what it does, I believe this with all my heart, if you think you're a dry drunk, then think about engaging in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's 12-step recovery. And what it did for me was it just took that onion and peeled it layer by layer by layer until the stench was gone.
Right. So I think part of that, if you're going to buy into raising your hand to go into, if you're out there Googling, right, what's a dry drunk, right, without a doubt. I mean, you and I would raise our hands and say, without a doubt, AA is a solution for that. Full surrender, working the program, the way of AA, not your own way, not picking and choosing, not changing the words, not all that crap. But if you really follow the program, right, there's these things at the end called 9-step promises, right? We read them at the end of every meeting. And what I would say is, hey, if you're out Googling, right, what is dry drunk? I think you need to read, it would really benefit you to read the AA 9-step promises. Google those and read those. And if you find that they are attractive to you or for you, and that, hey, you know what? I'm a dry drunk today. I identify as a dry drunk, and yeah, these promises sound awesome. Then I would suggest going to AA and giving AA a shot, really surrendering, because as you go through those, I have not seen a person who has thoroughly followed the path. When we read how it works, rarely have we seen a person who has thoroughly followed our path, right? If you thoroughly follow the path, those promises will come true, and you will be amazed at the life you're building. before you're halfway through.
Can I give a little medical background here?
Love it.
Okay. So,
Is this WebMD? Or close
what's
to
my
it?
reference point here? Medical News Today. Medical News Today. And it says that the Semel Institute of Neuroscience and Human Behavior states that about 75% of people recovering from AUD, acute alcohol withdrawal, is basically that experience something they call PAWS, which...
Oh, PAWS.
That's right. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Post-acute withdrawal syndrome.
Acute withdrawal system.
Right? So 75%
That
of
happens
people...
about this 4 to 6 month.
That's right.
Range.
So I guess the reason I bring that up is don't feel like you're not doing the right thing if you're feeling like you're drifting back into being a dry drunk and you're miserable and irritable and discontent and anxious, and don't give it time. I mean, according to this neuroscience place, it takes time. It takes time, and we're going to talk about that because people ask that question: how long does it take to get sober? And we're going to cover that in an episode.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I'm going to jump in here. I don't want to. I want to say something, Mikey, and
Go ahead.
I'm measuring how I want to say. I'm calculating it. But like on social media, we're connected to a lot of people on social media, and I love the folks. And I'm saying this with sarcasm because I was this person, right? I had 5 days sober. How's life? Oh, my God. Life is fantastic. It could not be better. I cannot believe how fast it turned around.
I'm out of jail.
Oh,
I'm
it's
back
amazing.
at home.
This sober path, this sober stuff is really great.
Right.
Man, so I wish I had done this a long time ago, right? Now, for me, and I've said this many times, I'm on the slow train. It did not happen in 5 days. I could barely lift my head off. I was in 8 days of detox. I could barely lift my head off the table in 8 days, in 30 days, in 2 months. I didn't sleep for the first 45 days. I mean, my brain was so induced with alcohol and so rebounding by not having it. My GABA, my neurotransmitters, whatever you want to say, right? I mean, I was out of whack, right? And it didn't happen fast for me. There was a period of time, and I just said it earlier, there was a period of time I had to sit in my own shit because the tools weren't working. I was still learning the tools, and I didn't have my friend Booze to help me get through the day. And I just had to sit there and get through it. But it's from going to meetings and seeing you and seeing Jim and seeing Mary get through a day. And I saw their progress and their joy and happiness and all those fun words happen long before I felt mine. But they gave me the hope. You said you want to talk about hope. They gave me the hope that if I stayed on this path, if I kept working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, that I would find that level of sobriety too and get out of that dry drunk stage, because that was not a cool stage to be in.
When did you find it?
So I remember it was, and again, I wish I took notes, but I remember it was about maybe 2 years. I remember it was like 6 o'clock, and I was in my bed, and I had this feeling come over me that I had never felt before in my life. And it only lasted about 5 minutes. And it just blew me away. I mean, it was such a feeling of whatever it was. And as I look back and through it, I coined that as peace. And I defined it, because a lot of people throw that word around. I don't know what half these words mean, but this is how I defined it, is when everything in my life at that point in time was okay. And after 5 minutes, it went away. And I was like all bummed. And I remember what I told myself. Glenn, if you stay on this path, if you keep doing the right stuff every single day, if you keep going to meetings and working the program, and at the time I was on step 3. I spent a long time on step 3. And said, hey, man, if you just keep learning, stay in the pool. You're not going to learn how to swim by sitting on the bleachers. That you'll feel it again. And like a couple months later, I felt it again. And now I feel that once, twice, 3 times a week.
That's fantastic.
I don't feel it all the time,
Right, because guess what? Life happens.
Life.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning.
Yeah, right. Well, I think we've covered this pretty well. I guess the only thing I'd like to leave you with is, if you do feel like you're in a dry drunk syndrome, okay, got some helpful hints for you here. Practice self-care. Eat better, exercise, avoid trigger situations. Start a journal. It's one of the things early on.
You
in these
love
podcasts,
doing that. I haven't really done that yet.
I tell you, it's cathartic.
I know, I need to pay attention to that.
It gets my head out of my head and into black and white in front of me, and then it makes sense to me, because when it's bouncing around, I've got ideas colliding up there. But when it's a sentence structure, I can digest it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Take your mind off of things is another suggestion. Do other activities. I would suggest go to an AA meeting, but that's just me. Limit other things that are going to hurt your sleep. Eating late at night, limit your caffeine, he says, while he's sipping on his caffeine. And remember this, and I'll leave you with this. The symptoms will eventually pass, and everything will be okay if you just keep working.
I love that. That reminds me of the first wheel. Doesn't matter where I'm at on the first wheel, I remind myself that thing moves. If I'm feeling great, just enjoy it. If I'm feeling crappy, hey, I have tools that I use today, and I, after 7 or 8 years, I've got it down where I know how to use those tools. But I'm still a student. I'm still in here learning.
Yeah, and expect bad days. They're not all going to be rainbows and unicorns.
Like today
and
was an
lollipops.
absolute. It didn't matter what I did today. It was a total shit show. In fact, probably around noon, I was just laughing, just because what I'm like, 17 things, can't go sideways at once, but they did.
So, and here
I am.
And here we are.
That's right.
I love you,
it, man.
We'll come back and keep doing these trending topics.
Yeah, I am glad I'm not a dry drunk today.
Hey, reach out to us. Podcast at Sober.Coffee. Reach out.
Boom.
Bye.
Thanks, Mikey.
All right, man.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago. Beautiful city.